Have you ever heard of a situation, where a country's basically sitting on a gold mine,
Yeah.
but they're only getting like pennies for it,
Oh, yeah, like,
when they could be
I know what you mean.
getting the whole treasure chest?
Yeah.
It's kind of what's happening with Australia and natural
Oh,
gas.
really?
Yeah, and it's kind of a wild story. So
I'd love to hear more about it.
today we're going to be diving into this YouTube video called Gas Extraction Scam: Australia versus Qatar and Norway.
Okay.
And we'll
Oh,
try and figure out how Australia's getting ripped off.
interesting.
Yeah. And what they can learn from the countries that are actually doing it right.
Yeah, like Qatar and Norway.
Yeah, exactly. And this is important for everyone, not just Aussies,
Right.
because it affects all of us in a way.
It does.
Like, think about it. The money from natural gas that should be going to,
Public services.
yeah, public services, infrastructure,
Right.
that's all affected by this.
Yeah.
So let's start with Australia. And the video we're talking about, it doesn't pull any punches.
Oh, right.
Straight up calls out these multinational companies that are extracting all this valuable natural gas.
Yeah.
But the problem is the Australian government isn't,
not getting their fair share.
yeah, they're not getting what you'd call a fair share of the profits at all.
Right.
And that's a big problem.
Yeah. I mean, so what happens then? Like, what are the consequences of that?
Well, that's where it gets kind of scary. It's a lot of money, potentially. That's
Yeah.
just poof, gone.
Wow.
It's money that could be used to fund, essential services, healthcare, education, infrastructure, all that stuff that makes a country run smoothly.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, you're missing out on a lot of potential benefit.
Exactly, missed opportunities. And, the video even highlights some specific criticisms of their current policies.
Okay, like what?
Well, they bring up these experts who
Mhm.
believe there's a much better way for Australia to handle this.
So what's the alternative then? What are these experts suggesting?
Well, that's where we look at other examples, like Qatar.
Okay, so how does Qatar do it differently?
Right. So Qatar, they've figured out how to really maximize their natural gas wealth. They have the state-owned company, Qatar Petroleum,
Okay.
and they manage the whole extraction process from start to finish.
So they're in control. They're not just letting foreign companies come in and take over.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And here's the key difference. They're not just sitting on these profits.
They're reinvesting
They're
it
strategically reinvesting it back into their country.
back into their own country. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's making a huge difference. Like, think about their infrastructure, their public transportation, education, healthcare, all top-notch.
Wow. That's impressive. So, like, do they have any specific examples of things that they've accomplished with this revenue?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, have you ever seen pictures of the Hamad International Airport? It's incredible, like something out of a sci-fi movie. And then there's the Doha Metro, their public transportation system.
Huh.
Super modern, efficient, clean, puts a lot of other systems to shame.
Yeah, I can see how that would, like, significantly improve the quality of life for people living there.
Right. And that's exactly what Qatar is doing. They're using gas revenue to improve the lives of their citizens, build a strong, modern nation.
Smart.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why more countries aren't following their lead, right?
Right.
But then you have Norway, which is doing things a bit differently, but also very successfully.
Oh, right. Norway. Okay.
Yeah, they have this thing called a sovereign wealth fund.
Okay. I've heard of that, but I don't really know how it works.
Me neither, before watching this video, honestly. But it's actually pretty simple, like a giant savings account.
Okay.
But instead of the money just sitting there, they invest it.
And then they use the return.
Yeah. And the returns are used to fund public services and all sorts of good stuff for the people.
Interesting.
And get this, Norway's sovereign wealth fund is the largest in the world, over $1 trillion.
$1 trillion. That's mind-blowing.
I know, right? It's hard to even imagine that much money.
Yeah,
But it shows you the power of thinking long-term, planning for the future.
for sure. For sure. But, like, how do they decide where all that money goes? Is there any oversight?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a whole system in place to make sure everything's transparent and accountable. It's managed independently, separate from the government, with these strict investment guidelines.
Oh, okay. So it's not just like politicians dipping into the fund whenever they want.
Nope, not at all. The goal is to ensure long-term financial stability for the country and to provide for future generations.
That's incredible. Such a smart way to manage these resources.
Exactly. So we've got Australia struggling to get a fair share, Qatar directly investing and seeing amazing results, and Norway playing the long game with their sovereign wealth fund.
3 very different approaches.
Totally. So what's the takeaway here? What can we learn from all this?
I think the video makes a really compelling argument for Australia to seriously reconsider its approach to natural gas extraction.
Yeah.
It's calling on the government to step up, implement policies that ensure they're getting a fair share of the revenue, and then using that money wisely, like Qatar.
Right. Because this isn't just about today, it's about setting up future generations for success.
Exactly. It's about using this incredible resource to create a sustainable future for all Australians.
And it's about making sure the wealth generated actually benefits the people who live there,
Absolutely.
not just multinational corporations.
And I think this raises a bigger question, too. What's the responsibility of resource-rich nations on a global scale? Like, how can we make sure these resources are managed ethically and sustainably for everyone?
That's a great point. This isn't just an Australian issue. It's something all countries with valuable resources need to grapple with.
Yeah, it's a global challenge.
Totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to chew on.
Okay.
Could a sovereign wealth fund, like Norway's, work in other resource-rich countries? What kind of challenges might they face?
It's an interesting question to think about.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to consider there. And this whole discussion, it's really just the beginning. There's so much more to learn and explore about how we manage these valuable resources.
For sure. This is a conversation that needs to continue.
Absolutely.